Hi, my name is Nicole Bordwell, and today I will be talking to you about my IME223 class. Our group project worked with Hardy Diagnostics for facility redesign and process improvement. Today I'm going to talk to you about an introduction into the company, the problem statements that they had given us, and the process in which we took to solve the problems, and then a main focus into the kitchen room, which is the main area that they wanted us to work on. In there we did a process improvement, we did a facility redesign, and we have conclusions in which to solve the problems that they addressed to us, and some recommendations for the future classes. The company I worked with was Hardy Diagnostics. Hardy Diagnostics manufactures cultural media and rapid identification kits for microbiology testing. Their main headquarters are located in Santa Maria, and they currently are looking to potentially update the kitchen facilities. The main purpose of this update is for additional storage space in the room. The kitchen operation requires the use of many pots, but unfortunately their current layout in the kitchen does not support the storage of all the pots needed, so we provided alternate layouts for them, along with new storage technologies to improve the capacity of the kitchen. The new flow of operation is considered and we think is the best solution for the company. Additionally, the comfort and happiness of Hardy's employees are of the highest importance. So any recommendations that we focused on here is to improve both the efficiency of operations and employee satisfaction. The main goal is to find the most cost-efficient way to improve the use of the kitchen floor space and optimize the implementation of the machine replacement. This includes providing the process flow and increasing the employee productivity and security. The main methods we used in approaching this project was detailed floor plans, 3D visual SketchUps, time studies, and a 5S. The main facility problem considered in this report is the kitchen. Currently, the kitchen does not have sufficient space to store all the different pots that are needed and to still function smoothly in that room. The total inventory requires double the existing storage capacity. The managers at Hardy Diagnostics said that they did not want any use of ladders or stairs to reach all of the inventory. Being able to move around in the room that we have to incorporate in the design and attempt to promote process flow. We discovered a satisfactory solution for the kitchen that doubles the storage capacity while ensuring that the operations in the clean room will be supported as well. Each week of the quarter, our group went down to Hardy Diagnostics to make observational notes of the process and to improve the facility. We interviewed company contacts and the employees that were working at the time to see what they wanted to see improved within the work environment. We used a 5S analysis to reduce the waste time in the kitchen and to improve the workflow that was going through. We also created floor plans in Google SketchUp and used conjunction to analyze the space and the path distances within the room. We also took a video recorder and time studies to analyze the process that was occurring in the facility at that time. When we first observed the kitchen room, one of the main things we noticed was the unorganization of all the current inventory in the room. The first thing we wanted to figure out was what was necessary and what was unnecessary in the kitchen. One of the main things that we noticed was all the underused shelving in the room. There were so many shelves in the room and so many that were empty and blank and were just taking up an unneeded space. There was minimal material on the shelves and there was minimal tooling on the shelves. We also noted that the shelves that they roll in and out every day with the material on it was blocking the aisles of all the employees that were trying to maneuver around it to complete their tasks. This was not easy to navigate around for them and also was in a pain in the way. The second part of the 5S is setting an order and reorganizing it. So one of the problems that we wanted to fix was finding a better solution for the shelving that would take up less space in the room and easier for access for the employees to move around and maneuver throughout the day that wasn't in their way. We had material and shelf locations that had to be there every day, but we wanted to make sure that if they needed to get to them, it was easy and accessible, but it wasn't blocking their area of work. Another thing that we noticed is the shelf is where the fridge was on top of the shelves was an unnecessary area. They only need the fridges a couple times a week. So we moved it to the other side of the room and thought this would be a better beneficial because it's out of the way and they aren't using it every day. So we want to just make sure that they had a better organizational system and a better layout for the actual room. The third part to the 5S is to shine and to scrub the room down. One of the ways we think that they can do this is by cleaning off all the surface areas and all the floor areas, also by cleaning the shelves and the pots in the room. Another thing that we thought was necessary was building a shelf above the measuring machine to put the receipt printer. This way it would keep it clean and away from all the dust particles from getting in so that the printer wouldn't continue to break. The fourth step to the 5S was to standardize the room. By this we wanted to label each shelf with a pot classification because there's 6 different classifications and about 5 different pots that they need, and they're not allowed to mix the pots because they have different chemicals that are going in them that they can't mix every day. So we wanted to have a clear labeling system for them so that they wouldn't get them mixed up. The next part that we wanted to label was the material shelving. This is all the excess material that they needed for the day. They have material that they're building that are coming in, and they also have material that they're using for the next day as well that needs to be labeled so they don't get them confused. The third is to have floor tape to present roll-away shelf locations. This way that they know exactly where the shelving systems get placed every day, and it's out of the way of all the employees that are going in and out of the room. And then the fifth way is figuring out a way to sustain this process to make sure all of the employees continue to do this and don't slack off after a couple weeks. In order to sustain this process, we want to inform and to train all the employees so they are all aware of the new layout of the room, and so that they keep it clean for future weeks and this doesn't occur again as a problem. We also want to do periodic checks for the organization by the operators. This way they have checkups so they make sure that their employees are still doing this as well, to make sure to keep them accountable for the actual room and so that they're being responsible about the room as well. Another thing that we noticed when we were observing the kitchen room is that they have these rolling carts with the pot transfer in them, and these get transferred in and out of the kitchen room each and every day. One of the main problems that we notice is that they have no designated locations for these rolling carts while in the kitchen room, so they're just randomly placed throughout the room, and the problem with this is that the employees are working around them and it's just in the way. So if they move the whiteboard and relocate it to another open space in the room, then the carts could be placed where the whiteboard is right now, and that would be out of the way of the employees. And if they added electrical reciprocators right there, then the hot plates that are on the carts could be plugged in there, and then they wouldn't have to worry about finding an outlet as well. Another thing that we noticed in the room is that they have these huge weighing desks and they have these little tiny weighing machines, and they don't really take up any space. So we think that the weighing desk should be half the size and they'd still be able to get the same amount of stuff done, and the desk would just take up half the amount of room and they'd have way more space in the room. The first SketchUp design that you see here is the current state of the kitchen room. As you can see that there's kind of just random shelves and random carts placed all around the room that have really no organization to them. Now the storage space right now is 60 square feet. The working space is about 205 feet squared, and the aisle space is about 3 foot 6 inches to 5 foot 6 inches. As you can see in this SketchUp design is the first alternative that we have to building a better organizational room for the kitchen. This first alternative is that we talked about with the company is placing wire shelving with better organization and standardization so that they can move the shelves can be placed in the kitchen without disturbing the flow of the process. This would require rotating many of the shelves that sit against the wall 90 degrees so that they can fit against the wall. This would mean that the shelves would stick out about 5 feet instead of 2 feet that they're currently at, but this really is unused space that can be taken up in the room. This would greatly increase the amount of storage available to store all the material in the pots. This is a cheap way, especially if they use some of the old shelving that they already currently have. This is flexible, so it would be no longer or shorter than the shelves, and they wouldn't take up really that much extra space that is needed for the room. And this is probably enough space for all of the things that they need to store in there. As you can see, the cost for this would only be about $2,930 at maximum, which isn't really that much more for the room if they're really considering replacing it and doing it all over. The second alternative we came up with is this system that you see in the picture. This is high-density shelving. These shelves can glide along the track so that when they are not in use, they can be collapsed. Using this creates even more shelving space than before because only space needed is between the two shelves at any given time is required and no space between all the other shelves. This means the company can request exactly the length of the track that they want and how many shelves that they want on the track. One of the benefits to this is it takes up about the same amount of space as the other one we did. It's about 5 feet, but this is unnecessary right now for the flow of the room, so it wouldn't be taking up any extra space. But one of the biggest problems with it is how expensive it is. As you can see, it is about $6,700, and for the point of just adding more pots, I think this is a little bit overpriced, but it's definitely a big benefit to having more storage in the room if that's what they're looking for. And the other thing is that one of the problems that may come across and one of the downfalls of this solution is that it takes longer to get the things off the shelves. But as I said again, it increases the amount of shelving space that they need in the room. Currently, the two alternatives we gave are for the shelving systems in the kitchen room that will implement process improvements to reduce the floor space needed in the kitchen right now. We also want the company now has a choice to select alternative floor plans based on the budget and the inventory requirements that they're looking for. As you can see in the chart right here, there's only a few minor differences between the two. Now, the one benefit for the stationary shelving is that they can use their own shelves, but the problem is it only takes about 108 feet squared of space, which is still more than what they currently have. And the benefit to this is it's less than $3,000. Now, the other alternative is the high density shelving. The downfall to this is it could be greater than $7,000, but it has 120 foot squared storage space, which is already double the amount that they have and would really benefit them for all the space that they need for all the current pots that they're trying to add. The next part of the project was doing direct time studies in the clean room. These time studies were going to help towards the simulation process for the 443 teams. Now, first what we did is we videotaped all the workers in the clean room and then took a clock, like a stopwatch, to time all of the different cycle times. Now, the first direct time study that we did was focusing on watching the worker load the disc into the machine. This task is very repetitive and is at a constant motion. The worker has to open a large plastic bag and then reach in for the individual bags inside to open and then stack them on top of the columns of the machine. In total, there are 8 different columns of the disc that are getting fed through the machine at the same time. The goal is to go faster than the machine, but making sure that the machine is not feeding through more than the worker can place at a time. It seems to be a very simple task, but after a few minutes of the same motion, it does become more difficult to stay ahead of the machine. Every worker completes the task differently. Some are more efficient than others. After about 8 seconds or so in the cycles, we would be ahead of the machine and then have to go about a minute of wait time. A direct time study was then taken and calculated to determine the appropriate allowance factors that represent all of the activities involved for the worker's specific tasks. The main 3 allowances affected was the standard time, then that there were the constant, the standing, and the monotony. 2 other allowances that were also observed in this was the overall percentage at the end, but didn't include in the percentage to the actual calculation was the continuous noise level and the rather tedious work. Now that you can see, one of the main things that we saw going on is that this was definitely a constant and repetitive motion that none of the employees wanted to do. So for the second time study that we actually did was inspecting and packaging all the discs. All that they did in this one is that every about 10 stacks that they would lift up and inspect the disc to make sure that there were no air bubbles or nothing wrong with the actual gel that got placed and fed into the machine. Then they would package them up. Now, one of the things we noticed is there's a lot of wasted time in between. They would do about 10, package them up, and then walk around or like talk to employees, and they were just kind of wasting a lot of time. Now, another thing that we noticed is one of the main allowance factors for this was the constant standing and the immediate noise level of the room. It was actually pretty loud in there, and they were getting distracted quite a lot. In our results of the time studies, first for the loading the plastic discs into the machine, the first thing is we calculated the average time for each of the cycles that ended up being 11.94 seconds. Then we multiplied that and calculated the standard time, and that was about 13.37 seconds, which is actually pretty fast and pretty efficient. Now, for the second time study, we did an inspection and packaging of the discs. The average time for each cycle was about 7.18 seconds, and then we multiplied out the standard time for this, which is actually 8.11 seconds. Now, the final recommendations I have for this project is if you do get a group that you're collaborating with the IME443 team, is really understanding their part of the project and understanding how yours works into it. So one of the things I suggest as just for the class in general is to create, probably more so for the professors, is creating the same project guidelines for IME223 and 443, because we came across that the guidelines didn't really match up, and it was really hard to kind of figure out how to make all of the report and all of that fit both without having to do two separate complete reports, because we wanted to try to work as one team. Another thing is we were kind of unsure in the beginning of what the professor was looking for, so making sure that you really ask the professors what exactly throughout the whole project they're specifically looking for 223 and for 443 separately, and making sure that you're matching up to both guidelines. The third thing that we came across too was the classes for IME 223 and 443 besides the lab time didn't match up, so it was really hard finding time throughout the week that we can all meet up. So another suggestion I have for the project is actually creating the same time in future quarters. So if they're both going to be collaborating together and working in projects together, it'd be beneficial if the class times matched up, and therefore that we could have a solid meeting time for each of that if we needed it. And I think this would really benefit the teams if they can work well with the IME 443 team and actually have more time to work with them. I think it would really benefit them. And I think that working with 443 actually was a great experience, because we actually learned a lot, because they've gone through this class before and they're just kind of expanding upon it. So when I wasn't unsure of things, I learned things really quickly, and they actually really helped and benefit. So if you do get the chance to work with 443, I would suggest taking it and being in that group, because you really do benefit from them. I just suggest that you really have an understanding of what the project's looking for. And thank you all for listening to my presentation.